to JWL Sports, where we review all the best sports clips from around the world. If this is your first time checking out a video, please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. We're watching a clip of The Hurt with Colin Cowherd, talking about Caleb Williams and, whether or not he is to blame if he ends up a bust. And it seems like that's what Colin is saying. The title says, why Caleb Williams is to blame if he is a bust. I'm really fascinated to see what that Colin has to say with regards to this, because he has ripped the Chicago Bears apart for years and years and years and years, even literally just like a couple weeks ago, saying how they can't develop quarterbacks, all their quarterbacks are awful, and all of this. And so now he's saying that it's going to be all on Caleb if he's not successful. So I want to see how he, approaches this, and then we can kind of break it down from there.
And for years and years, the Bears were known for defense. It could be Dick Butkus. It could be Richard Dent. It could be Brian Urlacher. It could be the 85 Bears. They were always known for defense and toughness, but they've never had a great quarterback. Really ever, or great receivers. And they really are old school football. But we've got to be fair. When they hired Ryan Poles, a former offensive lineman who'd spent time in Kansas City, he gets offense. Okay, and so when he made that Chase Claypool move, a lot of people sold their stock in him. But I saw RG3, former NFL player, and at another network saying yesterday, hey, Caleb Williams has got to pull an Eli Manning, and he's got to say, I'm not going to Chicago. We got to be fair. Pump the brakes, RG3, pump the brakes. So let's go back 1 year and look what Ryan Poles, the GM, has done. March 10th last year, he gets DJ Moore, a number one receiver. It decimates Carolina, decimates their offense. Everybody gets fired. He comes in. Chase Claypool didn't work. DJ Moore did. Legit number one receiver. He then in this January, hires Shane Waldron, an offensive coordinator. Now think about this. Geno Smith was a bust. He takes Geno Smith, gets him to 2 Pro Bowls, a 97 passer rating in a good division. And that's while the Seahawks were rebuilding their offensive line. 50 touchdowns, 20 picks. Geno Smith, who was done, lights out, career's over. 2 Pro Bowls.
But how did last season work out for Geno Smith in Seattle?
Okay. Then he gets, 6 days ago, DeAndre Swift, who's not only a 1,000-yard rusher, and he may not be Christian McCaffrey as a receiver, but he's a very high-end pass-catching running back. So he gets a guy that transformed Geno Smith a bust. He gets DJ Moore last year, a legit number one receiver. There's not that many legit number one receivers in the league. And even with Justin Fields, who struggled, DJ Moore was good. He then gets a great back out of the backfield for rookie Caleb Williams. In trouble, a dump-off guy. He's not done. He goes and gets 2 Chargers who know each other well. Tight end Gerald Everett, a number 2 tight end, good player, solid player, vet. And Keenan Allen, a tremendous third down wide receiver. So look at what Caleb Williams now is inheriting. And remember, Poles is a former offensive lineman. And he spent a lot of draft capital a couple years ago rebuilding a mess that he inherited on the O-line. They now have 2 legitimate tackles. He took a kind of a bust pick, moved him inside. The O-line's not bad. I said this past year. Don't blame Justin Fields' problems on the O-line. O-line's middle of the pack. It's not a disaster. There's a lot worse O-lines. 2 in New York. Chicago's is fine. So again, what has he given Caleb Williams? Much better than Justin Fields. A legit number 1, a third down receiver, 2 legit tackles, an offensive coordinator that saved Geno Smith's career, and a running back, a dump-off guy who got 1,000 yards running but can also catch passes. That's pretty good.
Okay, but so here is the thing. And I agree about the importance of an OC, right? I say that all the time, quite honestly. But if a quarterback is only as good as, say, like their OC, and right, and how important that was, and how this OC saved Geno Smith, then why, and then therefore when he doesn't have that OC, he's not as good, then why do we not then put more blame then on when some of these quarterbacks fail. Like, then why do we not give that grace to Justin Fields then? Like, that's what I don't understand then, because then that means that Justin Fields failed, because of that. Geno Smith was a bust, and then he was saved and rescued. So then why can't the same thing happen with Justin Fields? Or why are you so quick then to say, well, Justin Fields is just not good enough? That's where I kind of get a little confused by Colin's thinking in that regard. And in terms of Caleb Williams, I get it. He is a competent OC, and they have they're building a team around Caleb. And so if Caleb fails, then it's on him. I get that. But how do we define bust in this situation? Okay? Because obviously we know, like, the more traditional sense of the word bust of, all right, this guy's supposed to be great, and then he's just, like, awful, right? That's obvious. But what about if Caleb is supposed to be seen as potentially, like, en route to be a top 5 quarterback of all time? Like, they just see him as, another version of Patrick Mahomes, essentially. Now, what if he only ends up being as good as Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott, Baker Mayfield? Is that a bust, right? Like, is that a failure? Because that's obviously not what anyone's expecting. People are expecting way higher than that. I do not think, though, then, again, so much of what makes, like, a Patrick Mahomes is because of Andy Reid. I've said this so many times now. And so Caleb Williams has this potential to be this generational, this unbelievable player, that you need an unbelievable OC to not only continue to develop that aspect, but also to control and manipulate it, okay? It takes, I'm trying to think of a good example of this. The higher the stakes that you have and the greater talent that you have, the greater coach that you need, the greater expert that you need, okay? Kobe Bryant is not necessarily Kobe Bryant without Phil Jackson, and neither is Michael Jordan, okay? So you need those things. So yes, just because an OC or a head coach in general is sufficient enough and not like a complete disaster and is capable and is competent, doesn't mean that he has the ability to truly unleash the power and the greatness of, say, a Caleb Williams. You are at the mercy in football, especially as a quarterback, at the mercy of a lot of factors that are out of your control. The DC, the defense, the head coach, the offense, the OC, the running backs, the wide receivers, the O-line. I mean, there's just so much out of your control. What calls, what plays are being called and at what time, who's in your division. I mean, so this idea that he would just be complete blame is such a weird blanket statement that I don't know what we're basing this on. Are we just saying that, yeah, Caleb Williams gets all these opportunities and he just fails, right? He's just like an interception machine and keeps fumbling and keeps overthrowing everyone, because I don't understand, like, in what scenario is Caleb Williams just going to be a bust? In what scenario is Baker Mayfield going to be better than Caleb Williams? I'm going to tell you, no scenario, 0 scenarios is that happening. So I'm just not sure where Colin is then pulling this from. So, and again, I think Chicago is setting Caleb up to in a better position to succeed than they did Justin Fields. So I do feel that way. So if Caleb does just completely fail, or maybe even just play as similar as Justin Fields, then you could maybe blame some of Caleb. But I just don't think Patrick Mahomes would be succeeding with Chicago if he was drafted at the same time, and in place of Justin Fields. I think they would be a better team, but he's not having the Patrick Mahomes success. Neither is even Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott. I mean, we can go from the greats to the, work our way down the list here. So I'm just, again, Caleb Williams is seen as this person who has the potential to be Patrick Mahomes, right? That is why it was called the Caleb Williams sweepstakes, a generational talent, yada, yada, yada. in order for Patrick Mahomes to become Patrick Mahomes, he needed all of those things. He needed Travis Kelce. He needed Tyreek Hill. He needed Andy Reid. You know, he needed his O-line. He needed these things. That's just a fact. A fact. So if Caleb Williams does not achieve those level of success, but he wasn't given those things, right? He wasn't given a Shanahan, a McVay, a Shane Steichen. He wasn't given those things. Then why would we expect him to be able to achieve those things? Patrick Mahomes would not achieve his levels of greatness if he was drafted by the Carolina Panthers. That is just a fact. Okay? And if we want to say, well, okay, let's pick a more competent franchise, a more competent organization, Patrick Mahomes would not be Patrick Mahomes if he was drafted by the Buffalo Bills, by the Cincinnati Bengals. The only other place that Patrick Mahomes would probably, two other places, would be with the Rams and Sean McVay and Shanahan. That is how important having a great and elite offensive head coach or OC for that matter. And so unless you're giving that to Caleb Williams, like all of a sudden we're turning his new OC, who came from Seattle, as this elite OC, just because he made Geno Smith, kind of competent, that's bizarre. Not to mention, this is what I was trying to say before. There is a difference between bringing a person who's like kind of like this, like low, and kind of bringing him up to now like respectable, as to have someone who's respectable and now bringing him up here. There is a major difference. Major difference in approach of coaching, major difference in skill sets, philosophies. I mean, we see this a lot in basketball, especially how you have certain coaches that are really good at developing young talent, but then once that talent gets elite, they're not so great at managing that. And then you have other coaches that are great at managing the stars and the elite talent, but they're not so good at developing the younger talent. And I think we do see that to a degree with football, but I think that is what, again, the typically the super elite coaches, specifically in football now, like the Reeds, Shanahan's and McVays, they know how to develop. They know how to specifically, they know how to really work in the quarterback and put the quarterbacks in positions to succeed. So Caleb Williams is not being offered that. Okay, he's just not. So this idea that just because they're pretty competent now, sure, I would say if Caleb Williams can't reach Josh Allen's level or Dak Prescott's level, yes, I would say that then is on Caleb Williams. But if Caleb Williams is not reaching, Patrick Mahomes' level, that is not on Caleb Williams. That really is my ultimate argument, my ultimate argument and the statement that I'm trying to make more than anything. That if he does not truly achieve these transcendent levels of success, obviously it could just be that he just was never good enough to reach that level, but also you have to be given the opportunity with the right people around you, as well as the right coaching staff. And just because we're naming a couple names that are pretty good wide receivers and some pretty good weapons, and now you have a more competent OC and all that type of stuff, doesn't mean all of a sudden that that's now good enough to just do it all. Okay, I mean we know that we've seen this again and again with other players, other coaches, other teams. We know how important that is. So the idea that we're now going to just not afford that to Caleb Williams, I find a little suspect. That's just, I don't know why Colin all of a sudden randomly changed his tune. I mean, like it's very fascinating to see. I am somewhat confused by that. But those are just my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours, whether you agree with me or disagree with me. Either way, let's get into some discussions. Let's get into some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of, and I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.